The courtroom was silent. Too silent. The fluorescent lights hummed above, and every shuffle of paper echoed like thunder in my chest. My mother sat in the front row, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. Beside her, my brother smirked, his arms crossed with the same smugness he'd worn the night they cornered me in our kitchen. They thought this would break me, I whispered under my breath, my palms pressed flat against the cool wooden table. Across the aisle, their lawyer tapped his pen, certain this was the moment I would finally surrender. After all, what kind of person says no to saving their brother's life? But none of them knew the truth I carried. None of them saw the evidence sealed tight in my folder, the one thing that could turn their desperate performance into dust. I looked up. My mother met my eyes, hers wet with tears, trembling lips ready to beg again. She thought guilt would win. She thought love meant obedience. She had no idea what was coming. I wasn't the golden child. That honor had always belonged to my brother, Daniel. Growing up, it was clear. He was the center of the universe in my mother's eyes. If Daniel wanted the last slice of cake, it was his. If I brought home straight A's, my mother would nod politely but beam with pride when Daniel scored a single goal at his soccer match. I learned early that quiet effort wasn't rewarded, but that never stopped me from working. I took after my dad, steady, responsible, and practical. I kept my head down, studied hard, and eventually built a career in IT support. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me a kind of independence Daniel never had. Daniel lived differently, reckless, impulsive, always in the middle of some new adventure that conveniently required bailing out. When he racked up credit card debt, Mom called me. When he wrecked his car, Mom asked if I could just help this once, and every time I gave in. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the hope that one day she'd see me as more than the background character in Daniel's drama. Our family home reflected this imbalance. In the living room hung a large photo of Daniel in his varsity jacket, framed in gold. Next to it, a dusty picture of me at graduation leaned slightly crooked, as if even the nail holding it had given up. The favoritism wasn't just subtle, it was loud. At every family gathering, my mother bragged about Daniel's charm and resilience, even as he hopped from job to job. Meanwhile, I was introduced as the one who fixes computers. I thought I had grown used to it, but the sting never really faded. Especially that one afternoon. It was Daniel's birthday, and Mom threw a party in the backyard. Streamers hung from the trees, music blared, and neighbors gathered to sing his praises. I showed up with a carefully wrapped gift, a sleek watch I had saved 3 months to buy. When Daniel tore off the wrapping, he grinned for a second, then tossed it aside with a shrug. Cool. But not really my style, he said. Everyone laughed, including my mother. I laughed too, forcing a smile, but inside something cracked, because right after Mom handed him a small velvet box of her own. Inside was a gold chain. This, she said, is from the heart. Daniel slipped it on, kissed her cheek, and the crowd clapped like it was a coronation. My gift lay abandoned on the grass, the shiny watch face catching the last rays of sunlight. That was the first time I felt truly invisible. And it wasn't the last. At night, when I lay in my small apartment with the faint buzz of streetlights outside, I couldn't shake the image of that watch in the dirt. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that I was above needing recognition. But deep down, I wanted what every child wants, to be seen. I didn't know it then, but that night foreshadowed everything that was coming. Because one day soon, my mother would ask me for more than money, more than patience, more than another sacrifice for Daniel. She would ask me for my life itself. The phone call came on a Tuesday night. I had just finished a long shift and was heating leftovers when my phone buzzed. My mother's voice was already trembling before I could even say hello. "Daniel's sick," she whispered, as if the words themselves might shatter. "The doctors. They say his kidneys are failing. The fork in my hand froze. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of my refrigerator and the pounding of my heart. She continued quickly, her words spilling like a practiced script. "They've tested everyone else. No one's a match. Except you. You're the only one who can save him." I leaned against the counter, my knees suddenly weak. "Mom, you can't just—" Her voice cracked into sobs. "If you don't help, he'll die." The words hung in the air like a noose tightening around my throat. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's smug grin, the way he had dismissed my birthday gift, the way he had coasted through life knowing someone would always clean up his messes. And now, my mother wanted me to literally give him a piece of myself. At work the next day, I couldn't focus. The computer screens blurred, and every keystroke felt heavy. My chest ached, not just from fear, but from the crushing guilt, because part of me didn't want to save him. Part of me wanted to say no, but saying no in my family wasn't an option. Within a week, the pressure campaign began. My mother called daily, her voice wavering, sometimes sobbing, sometimes sharp with accusation. "You're his brother. Family means sacrifice. Do you want his death on your conscience?" Neighbors started showing up at my door with casseroles and pitying eyes. "Your mom told us what you're going through," they said. "You're such a hero." But I hadn't agreed to anything. I hadn't even spoken. Yet somehow the story had already been written. I was the savior, whether I wanted to be or not. The isolation cut deep. When I tried to confide in an old friend, he frowned. "Look, man, it's your brother's life. How could you even hesitate?" No one asked how I felt. No one asked if I was scared. To them, my body was just another resource Daniel deserved. Nights grew longer. I lay awake listening to the city traffic, my mind racing. My chest tightened with anxiety, my stomach churned. I imagined the cold steel of the operating table, the beeping monitors, the scar carved across my side. The weight pressed heavier when Daniel himself finally called. He didn't thank me. He didn't beg. He just laughed. "Guess even your boring life finally has a purpose. You get to be the hero for once." That broke something in me. The contempt in his tone, the entitlement. It was as if my pain didn't exist, as if my worth only mattered in how it could serve him. And then, in my darkest hour, when I thought I was completely alone, something unexpected happened. An email. From someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey," it read. "I heard about what's happening. If you need to talk, I'm here." It was a small light in the suffocating darkness. That was the first time someone reminded me I wasn't alone. The ally was Emma, an old college friend I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. She'd always been sharp, compassionate, and the kind of person who saw through facades. We met for coffee a few days later in a quiet corner cafe. I hadn't told her everything yet, just the bare facts, but as soon as I did, her eyes widened in disbelief. "They're trying to guilt you into major surgery?" she asked, her voice sharp with outrage. "That's not love. That's control." Her words landed like a slap. Control. Not family, not sacrifice, control. No one had said it out loud before. But while Emma gave me clarity, my family doubled down. My mother organized a family meeting. She called me, saying it was just to talk things through, but when I walked into the house, it felt like a trap. Daniel lounged on the couch, pale but grinning. My mother sat stiff in her chair, a tissue clenched in her hand. 2 of my aunts were there as well, their faces already lined with judgment. Mom started immediately. "We can't delay this anymore. Daniel's getting worse. Every day you hesitate, you're putting his life in danger." One aunt chimed in. "When we were young, family meant something. We didn't question loyalty." The other added, "Your father would be ashamed if he knew you were hesitating." I clenched my fists, heat crawling up my neck. They weren't just asking anymore. They were weaponizing my father's memory, twisting it into a blade against me. And Daniel? He leaned forward, smirking. You owe me, little brother. Think of all the times I covered for you. I nearly laughed at the audacity. Covered for me? The only covering Daniel had ever done was for his own mistakes. It was then Emma's words echoed in my mind. That's not love. That's control. For the first time, I didn't shrink. I didn't mumble excuses or promise to think about it. Instead, I took a slow breath and said, I haven't decided, and no amount of guilt or pressure is going to make me rush into surgery. The room froze. My mother's tears dried instantly, replaced by cold fury. You ungrateful child, she spat. After everything I've done for you, after all the sacrifices I've made, this family has given you everything. But I saw it then, clearer than ever before. The narrative wasn't true. I had been the one sacrificing. I had been the one giving. Always. Still, the pressure didn't end there. 2 days later, I received a letter, official, with a lawyer's stamp. My mother had gone as far as consulting legal counsel, asking if she could force the surgery. The letter itself didn't hold ground legally, but the intent was obvious. Intimidation. I sat on my couch, letter trembling in my hands, fear gnawing at me. For a moment, I thought maybe they had won. Maybe I was cornered. But then I remembered the folder I had started keeping. Emails, messages, and receipts of every demand, every guilt trip, every manipulative twist. I had proof of how far they were pushing. Proof of how this wasn't about family. It was about control. I tucked the lawyer's letter inside the folder. The symbolic weight of it grew heavier in my hands. This wasn't just evidence. It was a shield. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of power returning to me. I whispered to myself, steady and certain, they thought they still had control. They didn't. Once my mother realized I wouldn't bend so easily, the whispers began. At first, it was neighbors looking at me differently. Mr. Lopez from across the street muttered, I heard you're refusing to help your brother. A coworker pulled me aside in the break room. Your mom called me. Is it true you'd let Daniel die? My stomach dropped. She was spreading it everywhere. Her version of the story. I was the selfish, heartless son who valued his own comfort over his brother's life. The worst part? People believed her. Even relatives I hadn't heard from in years began texting me, do the right thing, family comes first. Some even accused me directly. What kind of monster are you? Daniel, of course, fueled the fire. He posted vague statuses online about betrayal, about being abandoned by the one person who could save me. Each post racked up comments of sympathy and outrage. Stay strong, man, people wrote. I can't believe your brother is doing this to you. The smear campaign worked. I felt the walls closing in. Every grocery run, every walk through the neighborhood became suffocating under the weight of judging eyes. But I wasn't helpless anymore. Emma urged me to stay calm and keep documenting. Every text, every voicemail, every accusation. Save it, she said. One day, this will matter. So I did. My folder grew thicker. Screenshots, recordings, letters. Proof that what they called love was really coercion. Proof that my family's campaign wasn't about saving Daniel. It was about breaking me. At night, though, the toll was brutal. Sleep slipped through my fingers. My heart pounded whenever my phone buzzed. Anxiety gnawed at me until I felt hollow, my ribs aching with every shallow breath. I ran my hands through my hair so often I left raw patches along my scalp. But through the fog, something sharpened inside me. I stopped reacting emotionally to their pleas. Instead, I started strategizing. I reached out to a lawyer. I began therapy sessions Emma recommended. And most importantly, I built a small circle of allies, people who finally listened without judgment. The more they tried to tear me down, the more deliberate I became. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was preparing. Meanwhile, Daniel was unraveling. His entitlement turned frantic, his smugness cracking into bursts of rage. In one voicemail, slurred from medication, he spat, "You'll regret this. Everyone will see you for what you are, nothing." But I heard the desperation under the venom. His mask was slipping. One evening, I opened the folder and laid everything out across my kitchen table. The lawyer's letter, screenshots of Daniel's posts, my mother's guilt-ridden voicemails, neighbors' texts. Each piece of paper glowed under the lamplight like fragments of a larger truth. I realized the folder wasn't just protection anymore. It was a weapon, a story waiting to be told, one that could finally reveal who they really were. I closed it carefully, my hands steady now. The day of reckoning was coming, and no one could stop it. The courthouse smelled faintly of old paper and polished wood. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, casting a pale glow over everything, as if even the building itself was holding its breath. I sat at the table, my folder resting in front of me like a silent shield. My mother sat across the aisle, her tissue already damp with rehearsed tears. Daniel slouched beside her, pale from illness but still carrying that same smirk, the smirk of someone certain the world would bend for him. Their lawyer spoke first, painting a picture of me as cruel, selfish, ungrateful. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Imagine watching your brother die when you have the power to save him. What kind of man refuses that?" Gasps murmured through the small crowd of relatives and neighbors who had gathered to witness. I could feel their eyes drilling into me, judgment heavy in the air. My mother began sobbing loudly, clutching Daniel's hand. "He's my baby," she cried, "and his brother is just letting him waste away." The room tilted against me, every gaze a dagger, but then the judge turned to me. "You may respond." My heart hammered, but my voice came out steady. I opened the folder, the papers whispering like wind as I spread them across the table. "I've been painted as selfish," I began, my tone calm, reflective. "But this is the truth." I lifted the lawyer's intimidation letter first. My family didn't ask me to help. They tried to force me. A ripple moved through the room. Next, I laid out screenshots of Daniel's online posts. While I stayed silent, Daniel publicly smeared me, turning strangers against me. This wasn't a plea for help. It was a campaign to shame me. The relatives shifted uncomfortably. Daniel's smirk faltered. Finally, I played a recording of my mother's voicemail. Her voice crackled through the speakers. "If you don't do this, you'll be responsible for his death. Everyone will know what kind of monster you are." The silence afterward was deafening. Even the air seemed to freeze. I looked directly at my mother. My voice didn't shake. "That's not love. That's manipulation. And I will not be bullied into sacrificing my body to maintain their control." Daniel's hands trembled, his knuckles white against the table. My mother's tears stopped, her mask of martyrdom crumbling as the room's sympathy shifted. The judge leaned forward, eyes sharp. "This court cannot and will not compel anyone to undergo a medical procedure against their will. What I see here is not a family request. It's coercion." It was over. The collapse was visible. My mother's shoulders sagged, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't find the right script anymore. Daniel stared down at the floor, his face drained of color, his smugness gone. I stood slowly, gathering my folder, my voice low but resolute. "I don't want apologies. I want change." The words echoed louder than any shout. For the first time in years, I walked out of a room not as the invisible son, not as the background character in Daniel's story, but as my own person, carrying my truth like armor. Walking out of that courtroom felt like stepping into a different world. The air outside was crisp, carrying the scent of rain on concrete. For the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of guilt pressing against my ribs. The whispers didn't vanish overnight. Some relatives avoided me, their eyes still filled with quiet judgment. Others pretended nothing had happened at all. But the silence no longer crushed me. It freed me. Daniel drifted further into the background of my life. He stopped calling. His online posts turned bitter, then disappeared altogether. My mother, once the orchestrator of every guilt trip, stopped showing up at my door. When I did see her, she avoided my gaze, her once commanding voice now cracked and unsure. The empire of control she had built over me had collapsed in that courtroom. At home, I pulled out the folder one last time. Every scrap of evidence, every poisoned word I had saved stared back at me. It had been my shield, my sword, my proof. But I didn't need it anymore. I placed the folder in a small box and slid it under my bed, not to bury it, but to remind myself of the journey. Proof not of their cruelty, but of my strength. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. Nights of doubt still came. The echoes of selfish and monster still rattled in my mind. But now, I had tools. Therapy helped me unlearn the lies I'd carried since childhood. Emma's steady presence reminded me that family could be chosen, not just inherited. And slowly, I began building a life that was truly mine. I moved to a new apartment, one with sunlight streaming through wide windows. I filled the space with colors I loved. Deep blues, warm oranges, tones my mother would have called loud, but that felt like freedom to me. The symbolic folder wasn't my only reminder. One day, while cleaning, I found the watch I'd given Daniel years ago, the one he tossed aside in the grass at his birthday. Its face was scratched, the strap worn, but when I held it, something shifted. It no longer represented rejection. It was resilience. Proof that even when my worth was ignored, it had always existed. I had just needed to claim it for myself. So I placed the watch on my own wrist. This time, it fit perfectly. In the mirror, I saw not the overlooked brother, not the scapegoat or the silent giver, but a man who had faced down his family's cruelty and walked away stronger. One evening, as the city lights flickered to life outside my window, I whispered the words that had once ended in fear, but now felt like a promise. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. If you've made it this far, maybe parts of my story feel familiar. Maybe you've been the one overlooked, the one expected to sacrifice without question, the one told that love means giving until there's nothing left of you. I want you to hear me clearly. They were wrong. Family, love, loyalty, those things are not proven by how much of yourself you lose. They're proven by respect, by choice, by honesty. So now I'll ask you, have you ever faced favoritism, betrayal, or someone trying to control you with guilt? How did you rise above it? Share your story. Because when we speak out, we remind each other that we're not alone. And remember, worth isn't something they give you. It's something you claim for yourself.